If your glutes feel weak, your pelvic floor feels off, and you're still leaking or feeling pressure, this one habit might be the reason. Constant clenching. Clenching your glutes all day without realizing it creates pressure, weakens the pelvic floor, and stalls your progress, making symptoms like leaking and prolapse worse. In this video, I'm going to be sharing you 4 exercises to help you release the clench, build real glute strength, and support your pelvic floor naturally. No Kegels, no surgery. Let's get right into it. Okay, so the first thing that we need to address is releasing the tension. So this is step number 1, whether you have pelvic floor tension or tension within your glutes. If you are someone that shoves your hips forward at the end of a hinge or any type of squat, lunging, anything like that, you're shoving those hips forward and you're shoving the femurs forward in the socket, which is putting a lot of pressure on your hip flexors. Not only that, but it's clenching and tucking on the bottom. And then also for those of you that might be clenching and tucking all day long, this is going to create a compression in the back of the pelvis, which is going to present your glutes to be a little bit flatter, but then also impact things like posterior pelvic floor tightness, maybe even constipation, because you're so locked up, the tailbone is getting locked up, it's getting shoved forward, and this is not good for glute growth, it's not good for pelvic floor function, and it's not good for prolapse. So we really need to work on eliminating that tightness so that we can then allow that sacrum to move, especially in movements like hinging and lunges and squats and things like that, because the sacrum should move. But if it's not able to move because you're locked up back here, you're not going to move more efficiently. So my 3-step process, the very first thing that you want to think about doing is releasing tight muscles. So I do have a ball here. It's a little bit more intense. So ideally you want to think about rolling on the outside. So your glutes, you can roll down on the mat, or you can even take it to the wall and roll it out there. As well as if you have some stickier spots, I tend to get a lot stickier up towards the upper glutes is where my sticky spots tend to be, but you might find that it's more of that posterior external pelvic floor that is a little bit more stickier. So you can do one of 2 things. You can either use the ball or you can use the foam roller. So I'm going to show you how to use the foam roller. So you're going to come onto the foam roller, and ideally anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds. But the most important thing when it comes to releasing muscles is we really want to follow it up, because we can stretch, we can do massage, we can release, but if we're not following it up with some activation, then it's not going to stick. So that's why we have this 3-step process. So ideally you want to roll the glutes out for about 30 to 60 seconds. And if you have a spot that feels super sticky, then what I want you to think about is breathing into that spot. If it's extremely uncomfortable, then you don't want to do it, because your body and your muscles will actually tense up even more. So it's really important that you breathe through this process, because we don't want to increase tension. We're working on decreasing it, and that's where breathing comes into play. Now you can also use the ball like I was showing you earlier. So I'm just going to place it underneath, and I'm just going to roll it out here as such. So again, same thing. If you find a sticky spot, you want to think about breathing into that spot so that your body doesn't do opposite, where it's going to clench and tuck even more. All right, step number 2 is we're going to breathe into that spot. So one of my favorite exercises is an inverted breathing, because I do feel like it allows the posterior pelvic floor and the glutes to really open up. And when we focus on our breath in this position, I like to think of it blooming like a flower. So we've done our release work, and now we need to work on our breathing. So I'm going to place the yoga block, and this is also great for someone who has prolapse, because you can think about when the hips elevated up above, this is going to help naturally pull the prolapse back in. So if you are more symptomatic, this may be a really good exercise for you. All right, so I'm going to bring my knees onto my block, and I'm going to bring my elbows down to the mat. And in this position, I want to think about that good 360 breath inhale. So inhaling through the nose, about a 4 count. And as I inhale, I want to think about my rib cage expanding to the sides, to the front, to the back, and then down into my pelvic floor. When we do that expansion of our breath and we have that 360-degree expansion, it spreads the load. And this is good intra-abdominal pressure that our body needs to manage pressure. But if there's a spot that's stuck, such as if you have upper back tightness, then that breath and pressure is going to go into the weakest link. And for some people, that's your pelvic floor, and for some, that's your abdominals. All right, so you're going to come into this position, placing your elbows down on the mat. And I want you to think about inhaling through the nose. You can think about suctioning the tongue to the roof of your mouth with a closed mouth. And as you inhale, again, we want to think about that expansion, but I also want you to think about opening up like a flower. So our breath, not all of our breath is going to go down into the glute area and into the pelvic floor,
but we do want to get some of it back there while also getting lateral rib expansion and back expansion. We've released the muscles, and so now we're combating it with the breath to lengthening it. Our breath lengthens internally. I want you to think about your breath eliminating those dents in your body. So I would say anywhere from 5 to 6 breaths in this position, 2 to 3 times, depending on how much time you have. So again, you're going to inhale through the nose, and I'm pressing my elbows into the mat to push my upper body away. I'm tucking my chin. I'm going to inhale into my nose. And then exhale, let all of that breath come all the way out. If you allow your breath to come all the way out, then this will allow you to get a better inhale. And the better inhale we get, the more expansion we can get into those sticky spots, all right? So that was step number 2. Step number 3 is following it up with exercise. So 2 exercises I'm gonna show you today is the hinge. I love the hinge because this allows lengthening of the glutes and the pelvic floor, but also allows for strengthening. We're gonna do a very basic hinge. We are gonna use the wall. And then followed after that, we have an airplane, and I'm gonna show you that exercise as well. Okay, so the first exercise is a hinge. We really need to learn how to master a hinging position because we hinge all day long. And if we are hinging from our back, then this can cause a lot of back discomfort and back pain. And so when it comes to glute clenching, many women, because of that glute clenching, when they go to hinge, they're not allowing this tailbone to open up and create length. So when you go to hinge, the tailbone should rise up and it should provide lengthening within the pelvic floor and the glutes. But when you're locked down, that prevents the tailbone from being able to move and the sacrum to be able to move in and out of that hinge position. So that's why we do the release work and then followed up with our breathing. So when it comes to a hinge position, we're gonna start on the wall. We're not gonna use any weights. I just want your body to get used to what it feels like lengthening and activation. So I wanna make sure that I have a nice tripod foot, meaning the big toe, outer edge, and my foot is nice and planted on the ground. All right, so you wanna think about your hip bones and your rib cage. So your rib cage should be stacked over your hips when you go into a hinge position. When we come up out of the hinge position, we should not have that open scissor position. And this is where if you're arching in that low back, but we also shouldn't be crunching down and rounding through our spine. So this is why it's very important to master the basics before you add any load to it. So when you go to hinge, I want you to think you have that nice stacked position. So you can either place one thumb on your rib cage and then your pointer finger on your hip bones. And then you're going to hinge back. I want you to think about chopping at the hips as you go back, and you can use your wall for reference as you hinge back to feel that opening. So another thing we want to think about is as if you had headlights on your sits bones, and as you hinge back, so you hinge back, the sits bones are headlights. So if you think about that, or you can think about simply about backing up into a parking spot, okay? And so as you hinge back, you also want to make sure that your knees stay over the arches of your feet, and then you come up and you activate. So notice with that movement, I'm hinging back, I'm feeling that opening. You can also place your fingers here, and then I come up and I feel activation. Now, when you come up out of that hinge, you want to think about pressing your feet into the floor to push the floor away. I don't want you to clench your glutes, right? I want the movement or the activation coming from the ground up. So again, as you come down, you feel a stretch, you feel an opening, and then as you press into the floor, you should feel activation. Notice that I'm not shoving my hips forward because I'm reiterating that glute clenching. I am simply thinking about opening as I hinge back, knees over the arches, and then press that whole foot into the floor to bring it up, okay? So work on that, use the wall for reference. Again, you can think about hinging back and then coming up, using the wall as reference to get those sits bones back. Then my second exercise that I absolutely love to promote lengthening within the glutes as well as activation is an airplane. So I'm gonna use the support of my bench here. And so what we're ideally doing with this movement is we're trying to get the pelvis to rotate on the femur. So if my pelvis was here, then I'm rotating open and then I'm dropping down, and this is going to provide length here and then opening. But notice that my femur is not moving. I'm literally moving my pelvis on the femur as I go into this exercise. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm gonna come into this exercise. I'm gonna start off with my left foot, okay? So option one is you're just gonna stagger that right foot back. So I've got that nice tripod foot. So I'm gonna open up, open to the side, but my femur stays forward, I'm rotating the hip over. So now I'm getting some lengthening here, and then I'm coming up and opening up, almost like a clamshell, but I'm just thinking about moving the pelvis over the femur. This is such a good exercise, both for the pelvic floor and your glutes. I love adding this in as part of my warm-up. Now, once you feel good about that, still holding on, then you can come into a standing position, open, and then drop down, adding in that lengthening. Again, we want to think about the pelvis moving over the femur and opening up like you would a clamshell with the pelvis rotating, okay? And once you've mastered that, so again, start with the leg staggered stance, so with support. As far as the height, you can use a simple chair. You can also use the wall if it feels good. Just something to support you. And then you can go into that single leg. I love adding these in as part of my warm-up to prepare my glutes for my workout. But that 3-step process, we're gonna release the muscles, we're gonna breathe into the muscles, and then we're gonna go into adding in lengthening of the muscles as well as activation. If you'd love to learn more about this, make sure you check out the comments below. I do have a full 12-week strength training program specific for women with prolapse and leaking to help bridge the gap between rehab and into fitness. And we talk about all of these things and many more barriers to fitness when it comes to prolapse and leaking. Make sure you subscribe, as I will be posting more video content, and I'd love to hear what else you would like to see.